Good afternoon. My name is Jessie White, and I'm a senior city planner for Denver Landmark Preservation. Today, I'm going to be going over our historic window repair replacement process. The presentation should take around 25 minutes, at the end of which I will open up the presentation for questions. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few presentation rules. First and foremost, everyone is welcome to participate. Staff will call on participants at the end of the meeting to ask questions or to make comments. I ask that you keep questions brief, no more than 1 to 2 minutes per person. And finally, I ask that you be respectful of everyone asking questions in the meeting. If you would like to participate and are joining via computer, please add your questions to the Q&A box or use the raise hand function. If you are joining by phone, you may press *9 to unmute yourself. Finally, we are recording this webinar, so if you miss anything, you can watch it later on our webpage. So to kick things off, I think it's important to figure out why we're here. Why does Landmark Preservation review historic window replacement? This is something that I went over last year, but I think that it's important to have a quick refresher. And the answer to that question is pretty straightforward. Historic windows are character-defining elements and add to a building's overall historic and physical integrity. Windows are part of the historic character of the building, whether they're high-style stained glass windows, interesting divided light windows, or simple 1/1 double-hung windows. The placement, proportions, patterning, and materials add to the character of the historic building. Windows can help us to understand and determine a building's style, date of construction, and even more about the people who constructed the building and why it was constructed in such a way. Another consideration that staff have about window review is that windows help to maintain the historic and physical integrity of a building. When it comes to historic integrity, historic windows, in many cases, were custom built and installed to fit a specific window opening with the intention of making the building look a certain way stylistically. Again, windows are part of the character of the historic building, and maintaining them or replacing them with high quality materials to match the historic window is key in maintaining the historic integrity of the entire building. As detailed in the photos on this slide, removal and replacement of character-defining windows can have a tremendous impact on the character of a building and the appearance of the building. Oops. Moved a little fast there. So physical integrity is the other consideration. Historic windows are constructed in such a way that they can be easily repaired without impacting the physical integrity of the building. When historic windows and window frames are removed entirely from their openings, it can potentially cause damage to the historic building, as can be seen in the images on this slide. Additionally, certain modern materials, particularly windows with high thermoplastic contents, can flex and warp enough to put pressure on the rough opening of the building. In this case, in Denver, it's usually softer historic brick openings, and this can potentially cause damage to the historic building itself. Finally, modern windows materials cannot be easily repaired, if they can be repaired at all. In most cases, when modern windows are removed entirely, they are put in the landfill and then replaced with new modern windows. This creates a lifetime cycle of replacement that not only adds to the waste of the landfill, it can also have a negative impact on physical integrity of the building. So Landmark's purpose is to preserve the historic and physical integrity of designated properties, and as such, we review historic window replacement. So now I'm going to talk to you about the benefits of restoring historic windows rather than replacing them. And in my mind, that can be boiled down into 4 categories: sustainability, longevity, cost effectiveness, and tax credits. With sustainability and longevity, as the saying goes, the greenest building is the one that's already built. The same can be said for historic windows. Historic windows have an embodied energy value that includes all of the energy from the milling and construction of the window, transportation of the window, and installation of the window. Restoring existing windows conserves that embodied energy and reduces the use of additional energy needed to make replacement windows. As I stated before, historic windows are often custom made to fit openings on buildings. These windows were constructed in such a way as to be easily taken apart and repaired over time, putting less material in the landfill. Pulley systems and weights can be accessed typically through a pocket and frame and can be repaired easily using existing weights and new cotton ropes. Or you can install a modern spring-loaded weight system in the existing frame. Damaged or missing putty can be removed and replaced with new putty. Cracked glazing can be removed and replaced by removing the putty and glazing points, installing new glazing, and reinstalling the glazing points and adding new putty. On historic windows, typically the first thing to go are the horizontal members of the window. That's where moisture tends to sit, and it ends up rotting out those horizontal surfaces. So window sashes can be removed from the openings by removing the window stops and pulling the full sash out of the frame. Sashes are usually put together using simple mortise and tenon joints. So rotted members could be removed and replaced with new members as needed. And the same can be done with the frame and the sills. Modern windows, on the other hand, are not made to be taken apart. And when they have served their purpose, they end up in the landfill, adding to overall waste, and often do not recoup the energy and materials that went into making them in the first place. And that brings us to longevity. Most historic windows contain superior building materials such as old growth wood, which is significantly more durable than modern wood materials due to their tighter wood grain. You can see an example of that in the image to the right. So in the cases where historic window materials cannot be salvaged, the windows are made to be dismantled and repaired over time. This means that they can be maintained indefinitely with continued maintenance. Replacement windows, on the other hand, generally only have a warranty of 20 years, but they have to be replaced. Again, the materials cannot be salvaged or recycled from modern windows and often end up in the landfill. And as I was able to uncover interesting details during the research for this presentation on warranties, one article that I fell upon or came across was Windows of Opportunity by Rebecca Williams with the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And in this article, she said that many replacement windows also come with a limited lifetime warranty. So even the better quality replacement windows limit the lifetime warranty on the glass to 20 years. Installation to just 2 years, and non-glass components to 10 years. Lifetime better describes the lifetime of the product, not the lifetime of the building. Research indicates that 30% of the time, a replacement window will be replaced within 10 years. Replacement windows are called replacement for a reason. Keeping in mind the sustainability and longevity impacts, let's move on to cost effectiveness of window replacement and tax credits. And when some people argue that historic windows are not energy efficient, they lose the homeowner money through heating and cooling bills. So that is their argument. And what I can tell you is that if there's any exterior penetration on a building, it will lead to energy loss. Whether it's through the outlets, windows, doors, chimneys, roofs, all of these are ways that your property is losing energy. According to the data collected by the US Department of Energy, windows typically only account for 10% of total air loss for buildings. This number can be significantly improved by maintaining your historic windows and adding weather stripping storm windows and the addition of double pane glazing within the existing window sash. Additional studies have shown that double glazed replacement windows may save $3 per year per window in energy costs, yet the savings in energy takes 50 to 70 years to recover when the cost of the replacement window and the installation is calculated in. It is extremely rare to find replacement windows find a replacement window that is made to last 50 to 70 years. So recouping that savings is nearly impossible on a modern window. Looking at the average average window replacement costs in Denver for high quality windows, it fits the historic rough openings. It can cost roughly $1,000 to $2,500 per window, depending on these windows. And these windows will only last on average 10 years before they must be replaced. It's safer to say that in Denver, we're kind of these days hitting more of the $2,500 mark with typical cost for window replacement. Historic window restoration, on the other hand, ranges roughly $200 to $2,000 per window for restoration. And this depends greatly on the type of window, the amount of restoration that's needed, but these repairs can often extend the life of the window indefinitely, rather than that 10-year lifetime for modern windows. And that lifetime can be extended on historic windows, especially if regular maintenance is performed on them. Restoration costs, when coupled with weatherization materials such as storms, weather stripping, and double pane glazing, leads to increased energy efficiency and energy savings, less waste in the landfill, and lower costs for maintenance rather than outright replacement. And that brings me to our last benefit, tax credits. Denver does offer a 20% tax credit for residential structures and an up to 25% tax credit for income producing properties. I will also note that we are currently in a state of emergency due to the pandemic, so there's an added 5% to that tax credit for a total of 25 residential and potentially 30 for income producing properties. So window restoration, the addition of storm windows and the addition of other weatherization materials like double pane glazing would qualify for the tax credit, helping to reduce the overall costs for restoration and energy efficiency work on your historic house. The tax credit can also be applied to window replacement so long as the windows are beyond, the historic windows are beyond feasible repair and are replaced with materials that are high quality and help to maintain the historic character of the building. This is helpful, especially when looking at costs for window restoration or replacement. So now let's move on to what Denver Landmark's review process for windows looks like. I'll start by covering the process for historic window replacements, followed by a case study, and then move into the process for non-historic window replacements and a case study. So admin review and LPC review are our two review tracks. Administrative review, if you're replacing fewer than 3 historic windows that are not on the primary facade and are not highly decorative windows, like leaded glass windows, staff can typically review these types of projects administratively. Administrative process takes typically 5 to 10 business days once we have a complete application. Keep in mind that windows that are approved for replacement must be beyond feasible repair. And then LPC review. If you're replacing more than 3 historic windows, replacing windows on the front facade, or replacing ornate windows that have, you'll have to go through the Landmark Preservation Commission review. If you're replacing more than 3 historic windows, you'll need to have a historic window evaluation completed by an outside third-party professional who will not benefit financially from the replacement of the windows. The third-party professional will need to include a window condition matrix and a narrative describing the assessor's experience with reviewing historic materials, and an assessment of the Windows's condition. In addition, window comparison sheets must be submitted showing how closely the proposed windows will match the historic windows. Once staff has all of those materials to complete the application, they'll schedule you for the next available LPC meeting, which is typically a 4-week filing process. Again, the windows must be beyond feasible repair for staff to be supportive of replacement. Under either review track, an applicant will have to provide at least the minimum following items. Here are images of those items for the review. And those include a site plan or floor plan labeling the location of the windows to be replaced, either elevation drawings or elevation photographs labeling the location of the windows to be replaced, labeled detailed images of the windows to be replaced showing their condition, and a cut sheet or a window quote for the proposed replacement windows. Keep in mind that under our current guidelines, we only allow the use of wood or aluminum clad wood replacement windows on a historic structure. So now let's move on to our case study. This is a project that came in 2019. The property owners of the house had to do some stabilization work on the turret of the home, and that causes the windows in the turret to become unlevel. The lower image shows the extent of that level issue on the windows. Sorry, it's a little blurry, but it's the best photo I have of the situation prior to replacement. In addition to the windows, they were in a severe state of disrepair with cracked glazing, rotted rails and stiles, and failing putty. Some of the damage can be seen in the upper photo on this slide. In this case, the extent of the misalignment of the windows, disrepair of the windows warranted replacement. There was just no way that they could feasibly have restored these windows and made them fit into the openings after that turret was stabilized. So we did approve replacement. And as you can see in the lower corner, they did provide a comparison of the existing windows and the proposed windows, and you can see that they're a very close match. So the Landmark Preservation Commission did approve the replacement of these windows because the existing windows were beyond feasible repair, and the replacement windows closely matched the character of the historic windows and would not have a negative impact on the overall character of the building. So moving on, I'm sure you're thinking, well, preserving historic windows is great, and I would do that if I had them. But what if your windows on your house have already been replaced with non-historic window material? So we do have a process for that as well. Request for non-historic window replacement typically goes through our administrative review process. Again, that's a 5 to 10 day process. This type of review hinges on whether or not the proposed replacement materials fit the character of the house and are of high quality material. Again, we only currently allow the use of wood or aluminum clad wood replacement materials in historic buildings. The applicant would need to submit the same general information as previously covered, minus the window assessment, because they are non-historic windows. And here's our case study for non-historic window replacement. So this house is a Queen Anne style house from the 1900s. And obviously, as the upper photo shows, it had replacement steel windows from the 1950s in it. So they were not original and not within the period of significance for this historic district. So they were non-historic windows. The windows were not a part of the character, and the applicant requested to install new wood double hung windows that better fit the character of the house. As you can see with the final installation in the right-hand corner of the slide, they were able to replace those steel windows with more appropriate 1/1 double hungs. And the applicant was able to apply for tax credits for replacing these windows, which helped to offset some of the cost for replacement. So one final comment on the window review process has to do with revising the landmark guidelines. Landmark is continually trying to improve our review process and keep up with the latest advances in preservation. As part of that improvement, Landmark is looking to revise its window review process. We're hoping this coming fall we'll start that process. In general, the revision process will be very community involved and will open with a community meeting followed by LPC discussion and public hearing prior to final adoption and implementation of the guidelines. The public is invited to participate at all levels of this process. This will be a quite lengthy process, as Landmark does want to ensure that we are involving the public as much as possible and we are being thorough in our revisions. Landmark does have some overarching goals when revising our window replacement guidelines. Of course, we'll be uncovering additional goals in revising our window process as we get the community more involved. But those general goals that we have currently are to allow for alternative materials in addition to new materials as window technology improves. Flexibility on window replacement, particularly for less character defining windows, such as 1/1 double hungs, and more in-depth study of the impacts of energy efficiency, particularly for buildings with still casement windows or windows that cannot be easily repaired. I did cover a lot of information in just a short amount of time, and I was unable to cover everything I wanted to. However, it is at least a decent introduction to our window review process and what we're looking for when we revise our window review process. If you would like to do additional research on the topic of window replacement versus window restoration, there's a ton of resources out there. These are just a few of the resources that I use when putting this presentation together and have used in past workshops. And I would invite you to check them out as there's a lot of helpful information. And then before I open the presentation up for questions, here is our contact information. If you have any questions about Windows that we are unable to get to in this Q&A session, I'm happy to answer your questions via email or via phone after the presentation. And here's also a list of our upcoming webinars if you're interested in attending any of those. Thank you, and I'll open up for questions.